Hello, my name is Justine. I am a registered nurse and a certified emergency nurse, and today I'm going to be chatting with you about effectively implementing process changes. Let's get started. So, we're going to start with an emergency department case study. The department's behavioral health policy is being overhauled. Um, The hospital as a whole has a population that includes a significant number of mental health patients, and in the recent weeks, the hospital has seen a number of patients that have eloped, and a high-risk patient actually harmed themselves while awaiting psychiatric placement. There are very significant legal implications that the hospital could be facing, and as a result, they are um, requiring that new changes be rolled out. As part of these new changes, patients will be required to surrender all of their belongings in triage. That includes any clothing or anything they may have brought with them. New safety equipment, such as paper blankets and suffocation proof pillows, will be utilized, and all patients are going to have to be changed into paper hospital scrubs. Additionally, any one-to-one sitters are going to be documenting what tools have been utilized for patient safety, and high-risk patients will require documentation every 15 minutes, including a room check and any tools that are still being utilized. While this change is being rolled out, the department management is feeling a lot of pressure from upper management because this was a significant event, and they are worried that they're going to be sued or face action from the Board of Nursing. Rather than waiting until the nursing educator had returned, they decide the best course of action is to send out a update in the weekly update, which holds information about anything kind of going on in the department. And because of this, many staff members may not have seen or fully understood what change occurred. Within a few weeks of this change being rolled out, a patient who was sitting with a one-to-one sitter due to a identified high risk of suicide was able to use belongings they still had on them to attempt to strangle themselves. And a complaint was filed with the State Board of Nursing, and the department was put on a 90-day notice that if they didn't make significant process changes that could be measured, the department would likely be closed. So, there are three important questions that a lot of people will go to in a case like this. Who is to blame? What went wrong? And how can we grow from this? Many staff members were involved in the care of this patient, but ultimately, the organization is what allowed harm. These changes happened rapidly, and staff were inadequately educated on procedure changes and why they were so darn important. Management didn't take the time to review the new policy and solicit feedback from staff members. Because of this, many staff members didn't feel the need to adopt these changes. They didn't see why they were important, and they just continued doing what they were doing. Unfortunately, this did result in patient harm. And as a leader, this can be pretty discouraging. But rather than focusing on deciding it was the sitter's fault or the nurse's fault and assigning blame in that way, as a leader, we can say, what did we do wrong? How can we prevent this from happening in the future? And how can we improve? Nurses are change agents in a number of ways. Advanced registered nurses are instrumental in starting and carrying out change. They seek to prevent harm before it occurs, and nurses should be aware of standards of care in their current practice so that they can identify any deviations or needs for improvement. Nurses spend a lot of time at the bedside, and because of this, they often can identify gaps that may not be as obvious to people who are working in an office and not seeing patients daily. They may also get feedback from patients about things within our system that just aren't going that great, and they can use that feedback to encourage change. They can also work with members of different departments in order to identify things that they're seeing that may cause risk for patients. This could be anybody from environmental services to radiology techs to nurses on the floor. And so it's really important as a nurse leader to build rapport with staff. Okay, so let's talk about some barriers to change. First and foremost, organizations can be resistant to change just because of costs that it may incur or difficulty with change in the past. Freeland et al. Found that organizational culture and staff being unaware of changes, as well as not understanding why changes were necessary, created significant barriers. Potential cost is always a significant issue, and nurses can overcome this by sharing how these potential changes can create better cost efficiency within the organization. Staff feeling uninformed about changes seems like it would be a relatively easy issue to address. But everybody learns a little bit differently. So if a nurse leader is relying on simply an email or just updating a policy and asking staff to review it, they may have difficulty. To address this, they should be addressing staff in a number of ways, including emails, infographics that are placed about the unit, and educational offerings. Staff should also be regularly checked in with just to make sure that they understand, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. How do you feel? What are your thoughts? It's important that staff don't feel threatened by change or that change is in some way punitive to things they are doing at work, because that can make them more resistant, and it may also make them look for outside employment. So, let's talk a bit about high reliability organizations. Currently, the Joint Commission has a significant push for high reliability organizations, and they want nursing leaders to commit to a goal of zero harm. Adoption of high reliability tools is one way that we can reduce patient harm, as it focuses on how process gaps align to cause issues. Many organizations teach staff that these processes are a little bit like Swiss cheese. You can see the picture of my cheese there. Basically, every process has holes in it. As much as we try, it's unavoidable. The idea is each one of these processes lines up in a way that these gaps don't match up so that harm can reach the patient. Other things about a high reliability organization are a commitment to a speak up culture where staff feel like they can speak up if they say something wrong, accountability of every staff member, not only to themselves, but to the things around them. So if you see something, you should say something if you feel it's wrong or you have concerns. And then finally, we are creating a process improvement that focuses on how we can improve rather than assigning blame to those we feel are responsible, rather than saying this happened because of the nurse or the doctor. We're saying this happened because we have created a system that allows for these errors to reach the patient, and these are the holes that we need to fix to prevent that. Another principle that the Joint Commission is encouraging is Lean Six Sigma. It's part of a high reliability tool to prevent patient harm. According to Al Awad et al., Lean principles focus on reducing waste and streamlining processes to help reduce variability. As we previously discussed, the costs associated with change can be a significant barrier within organizations. Lean principles kind of help with that. They say that doing this, and this is creating a cost incurred of this much money. But if we simplify our process, we can help with efficiency in patient care and also take out some of the tools that may be costing us a lot of money. The Six Sigma principles are focused on effective problem solving, which is super critical when you are looking to reduce errors. Awad et al. Encourages incorporating these ideas with Kotter's 8-step change model to improve the implementation process. Just knowing what to do isn't going to be beneficial. We must also know how to introduce these changes in an effective way. The Six Sigma model is slightly similar to Kotter's model in the idea that it is a circular process. So it starts with a request for change. Then we conduct an impact analysis. At that point, it's either approved or denied, which means we go forward with what we're planning on doing, or we go back and make revisions. We then implement it and we review the results. This is similar to Kotter's model in it includes a lot of the same steps. So, Kotter's model starts with developing a sense of urgency among staff members. Basically, this is like our problem is mental health patients are getting hurt. And now that we know what our problem is, we form a team of diverse individuals that come from multiple different backgrounds. That way, we can get a lot of different viewpoints. From there, this team comes up with a vision that helps align us with our goal. And then they work on communicating the vision to other team members. As we kind of talked about, this should be done in a lot of different ways: infographics, emails, and even educational offerings, as well as potentially appointing team members as go-to people that questions can be asked. Next, we're going to move to empowering this team to act on that vision. They need to have the authority necessary to carry out these changes. From there, we're going to establish a few short-term wins. We understand that change is a process and it's not going to happen all at once. So we want to see that we're on track and track our progress by establishing short-term wins that show that we are aligned with what we need to be doing and also keep the team encouraged that we are following the right steps. From there, we're going to consolidate the improvement and changes further. So we are going to take what we've done and we are going to roll that out in a more wide scope to the rest of the individuals who work there. Then finally, this is going to become an institutional change. So this is going to be something that we are doing every single year, that we are doing all the time. Okay, so let's go back to our case study and talk about a few of the things that kind of went wrong here. First and foremost, we know that management rushed the change because they were afraid of action from regulatory boards. Rushing the change didn't allow them to gather feedback, and it didn't allow them to fully understand what was going to be required, such as waiting until the educator was there to implement this change. Staff as a whole didn't feel like they could speak up for themselves and let management know, we're not sure about these changes, we're not sure about why we're doing these things, and we really just don't understand. Finally, neither of the policies accounted for the change that occurred and the error that happened. So both policies mentioned that patient belongings should be removed, but they were not necessarily as specific about patient clothing that seemed like it was lower risk. They also didn't account for the fact that at the time that this happened, the patient had covered their head with a blanket and could not be completely seen by staff. All of these gaps aligned in a way that unfortunately allowed significant patient harm. So let's apply Kotter's model to our case study. The first thing we're going to do is talk about our sense of urgency. So we know that the Board of Nursing has put us on a timeline. We have 90 days now. That is our sense of urgency. We have to get this change rolling, or our department could be closed. Our team should include a few people. We want to have nurse management, we want to include our educator, and we also want to include our charge nurses. These people can serve as points of contact for the rest of the team to determine what questions they have, if they've noticed process gaps, and how we can improve on that. Our vision is to reduce patient harm through successful implementation of our new behavioral health policy. To communicate this vision, we can send out an email in our weekly update, but we should also post some signs in the break room, at the charge station, and hold meetings to let people know what this process is going to look like. Next thing we're going to be doing is empowering others to act. So we've empowered our charge nurses to address team members about these things. We want them to feel like they can voice their concerns if these are not being followed in mental health patients, and work with management in a collaborative way. Our short-term wins are going to be focused on how we're doing our reviewing to make sure this is happening. First and foremost, we're going to make sure that there's adequate documentation, that the proper steps are being followed. All patient belongings are being removed. A sitter is being assigned. The patient's not being left by themselves. And then we are going to carry this change out even further, making sure that everybody is aware and making sure that we have completely implemented and integrated it. From there, this will become an institutional change. So it's something that we are going to regularly be holding check-ins with staff on. We are going to be performing chart audits to determine whether or not the appropriate documentation is occurring. And we are also going to be tracking our sitters and making sure that they are a one-to-one with high-risk patients. We will also be offering educational opportunities every year. So, moving forward, our changes are going to follow a more standardized process, utilizing Cotter's model. Staff are going to be aware of why we need to do these things, and they're going to have the opportunity to ask questions of us if they have concerns. Any input that they provide will be taken seriously, and we will show them how these changes are being implemented to meet their input. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email me. My email's at the bottom. And these are my references. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this with me today.